so that was a great night, and it was just one show. And so we could just be ourselves. Wasn't a two-show night. We were rehearsed. There was no saying, well, we've done enough rehearsal or something like that, or we have to limit the amount of time. We rehearsed, we were prepared. Everything had been taken care of, so it was a great experience, really.
And after the shows, were there sometimes, parties up at Elvis's penthouse?
Yeah, and we had some great times, and Elvis entertained, and some wonderful people to meet. Basically, that job took a lot of musicianship. So there weren't many late nights. A lot of times we would rehearse during the engagement, rehearse in the daytime to perfect certain songs. There were a couple of recordings that they wanted to make that were not included in the original set, so we had to rehearse those. So some fun times at the penthouse at the International Hotel, but as I recall, didn't go on too late. Up the next day for rehearsal.
Would you get to talk to Elvis in private?
Yes, many times. Elvis was a busy guy, so it wasn't too long, but we would sit and talk about the tunes, talk about the shows. We'd kid around with Glenn D. or James Burton and just have a general good time.
You know, I was just thinking, at the time you were basically a kid. You were 22.
Yeah.
And how did he communicate with you? How did he address you?
Called me Bobby. Yeah. And of course, I worked for Elvis. Elvis was the person that I had to make sure was, that I was doing the right thing as a musician. But he was just a regular person, very nice. That's all I can say.
Was he encouraging? Would he comment on your playing during the shows?
He would say things like, "You stayed right with me." He would make comments about certain tunes, but not too much. I mean, he was just happy with the way things were going, it seemed to me.
And then after February, you all went to the Astrodome.
Yeah.
That must have been special.
Yeah, I remember that we were on this stage that they had to wheel out, and I was up there the first time that they did that, and looking at that structure and everything, amazing.
Was it intimidating in any way?
Well, it wasn't necessarily intimidating, but I think you have to remember that we had speakers in the ceiling, and you would hit the backbeat on the snare drum, and maybe a second later it would come out. It was that late, and it took a lot of getting used to. I don't think we ever were really used to it, but what a great show it was. These are Elvis's folks that he grew up with, that saw what happened when he was on Steve Allen and with Milton Berle, and so audience reaction and just.
That's also where he basically started out in Texas. That's
Right.
where he did some of his earliest shows.
Right.
And that last show, that was on March the 1st, 1970. Do you remember anything about that one?
Been a few years, but I remember that we had a party that night, and was a great evening, and talked about the show, and Elvis said, "I'll see you back in LA," and that was it. It was an early evening, actually.
Did you know at the time that that will be the end?
Well, I kind of had a feeling, rhythm sections, and in particular this one, formed for a specific situation. Ronnie Tutt, a great musician, and a situation where he couldn't make the second engagement there. So I understood that there's probably a good possibility he would be coming back. And, you know, in the sense that he fit the rhythm section so well. But I'm happy with what happened in terms of what I did for Elvis, because, you know, a couple of the things that I played on, I felt you know, I was just happy to be there. Yeah. And they were unique.
And it must also be great to have your art preserved like it was on the on-stage album.
Yes.
You know, anybody that puts it on a CD player can listen and tune into those amazing live shows, because those were all remarkable shows. Many would say some of Elvis's best.
Yeah. Well, you know, I thought they sounded great. Thought Elvis sounded great. James Burton was amazing. So Jerry. Yeah, so it's a unique album.
Yeah. Going back to the Amsterdam shows, you also got to meet Priscilla.
I did, and she was very sweet. I remember that the night we got there, they picked us up in a big entourage of cars, and they had red lights flashing and the whole thing, and we were on this bus going to the hotel, and Priscilla sat right next to me, and we had a nice conversation, and we talked about the gig at the International, and so very nice to talk to her and meet her.
Yeah. She was a nice person.
Great, just great. Everybody surrounding Elvis, Lamar Fike, everybody.
Yeah. And Tom Diskin.
Tom Diskin, the greatest, and just very, very professional, very nice.
Did you have any interaction with Colonel Parker?
To be very honest with you, from the time I started with Elvis and all the way through, I never talked one word to him. And I found out later that that wasn't necessarily unusual. My brother and my mother came to the opening night of the Elvis show, and I think my mom spoke to him. Because actually, the Colonel and my father knew one another, which was, I mean, we've always, you know, as soon as Elvis became popular in the 50s, my father would say, you know, I know the Colonel. They knew one another, I could think was back in Ohio. So.
At one of the shows in Las Vegas, you got to meet a celebrity backstage.
Yes, I did. Of course, who hasn't enjoyed Cary Grant pictures? I mean, and excuse me, he was backstage saying hello to Elvis, and he came out of the Elvis's dressing room with several folks that he was seeing the show with, and as he walked up the hallway, as if in a motion picture with the suit on and the whole, and he says with the English accent, "Oh, there's the drummer. Let's say hello to the drummer." And I shook his hand and I said, "It's a great pleasure meeting you." And he says, "Oh, I love your drumming." He says, "It's so wonderful." And he went like this and everything. And I called my brother later, who is an actor, and I said, "You're not going to believe this story." And so it was a great experience being able to meet him.
Great. All of that is 45 years ago. And, well, now we're here 45 years later.
Yeah.
And why did you decide to come back to the Elvis world after all these years?
Well, you know, I haven't been to Graceland.
No.
Now, I mean, you might say, well, you know, you haven't been to Graceland. I mean, you worked with Elvis and so on. I really prefer to think of Elvis as you know, as he was. All my memories are positive. Mm-hmm. And so I really wasn't aware that we could do the show this way. It's a tribute to Elvis, and it's a tribute to his legacy. So I'm just glad, and I thank you for asking me to do this, because this works for me. This is perfect.
That's That's really nice to hear. Thank you, Bob. And if Elvis would have been alive today, what do you think he would have felt about this show?
I think he would have loved it. I think that he might be a little sensitive to some of the other shows that have come on during the years.
You mean the impersonator shows?
Yeah.
You think he wouldn't have appreciated those?
Well, I think he would have said, it's okay to pay tribute to somebody, but you kind of, you have to do it in a professional way. And some of those shows are just, they're not paying tribute because they don't have the ability to pay tribute.
Right.
I mean, Dwight does a great job. The players we have, Carl, Damien, it's a great tribute to Elvis. It's just a great tribute to his legacy.
I agree. After all these years, of course, it's now almost 40 years ago that Elvis died. How do you look back on your association with him?
Well, with great appreciation. I mean, it's always been a plus for me. And I just think he was a great artist. Such a normal style person. That's the thing that got me about him. He didn't have an affected part of his personality. If you talk to him, that was Elvis. And I've worked for a lot of artists that were not that way. And they sort of had this image of themselves that, they were maybe a little more important than somebody else or whatever, but Elvis was just a sweetheart, nice man, great to work for, always thankful I had the opportunity.
That's great to hear. Well, thank you for the interview, Bob. And as I said before, it's a real pleasure to bring you out to Europe and have you over here.
I'm glad you did. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.